Riley Davis here from Heat Check CBB on behalf of Sleepers, doing some previews, joined by my Heat Check cohort, Connor Hope. And we're talking LSU at Syracuse. It's the ACC-SEC Challenge. Connor, we've talked a little bit off air about the Orange. It's a team that had some high hopes coming into this season. Maybe a little injection of life with Red Autry as the coach now, and then a backcourt that had been sort of slept on as far as their star power between Judah Mintz and JJ Starling, but the Orange are coming off a pretty rough showing in Maui. I think that's fair to say. This, to me, looking at it, they get LSU at home. LSU has been okay, not really good. It seems like a must win if they want to salvage any sort of non-conference resume that could hopefully get them into the tournament. But what are your thoughts on Syracuse? I know you've watched them a good bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a must win for both teams to salvage any sort of non-conference resume. But for Syracuse, it's the lack of shooting has really plagued them. I mean, they can't really shoot, and the issue with not being able to shoot is they also can't rebound. Which, when you have a 7'4" center starting, you would expect at least some semblance of a good rebounding team. They're mid 270s defensive rebounding. I'm just looking at it now. They're 277th on both ends of the floor in rebounding percentage, according to KenPom. So really can't rebound, don't take advantage of their length. They don't have a player, Kyle Cuff's under, but they have like one player under 6'4" on this team, a bunch of players 6'7" and taller, 7'4", Naheem McLeod, as I said. And when you're a poor shooting team like Syracuse is, and you can't rebound, it puts your team in a whole world of hurt, because you're constantly getting one opportunity to score on your end of the floor and you're not taking advantage of it. And opponents are getting 2-3 opportunities to score on their end of the floor. And just going back, I mean, it goes back to the Gonzaga played both Purdue and Syracuse. And Zach Edey ate against Gonzaga. We hear all it's just because he's tall talk about Zach Edey. Naheem McLeod is the same height, and the front court of Gonzaga absolutely made him look bad. So this is a Syracuse team that has to lean on Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, Chris Bell as well. But when those three guys are shooting, Judah Mintz is shooting okay, 35%, but Starling's shooting under 10%. Chris Bell's only shooting 30%. Like, that's not going to do it against a team in LSU that, for what it's worth, is relatively good on the offensive end of the ball rebounding. And I'm going to correct myself. 277th defensive was LSU. Syracuse's defensive rebounding percentage is actually 333rd. So I was giving them a little bit too much credit on that end of the floor.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that's really disappointing considering Syracuse's height and their even their length, their size advantage. That was, even going into the season, one of the reasons why I was high on the Syracuse team, was that they have guys on the wing like Chris Bell, who's 6'7", who you mentioned, Justin Taylor, 6'6", Quadir Copeland, 6'6", Malik Brown, 6'8", who sort of swings between the 4 and the 5. A lot of ACC teams, they don't have that many bodies of wings with that size. And I know Chance Westry is out indefinitely, but he was someone else who fits that same bill. It's interesting. You look at the defensive rebounding numbers and you would think they're still running a zone, but they're not, which makes it even more worrisome. And yeah, you mentioned McLeod as someone who, it just seems like, doesn't use his size well. Like, I watched that Gonzaga game and they were hemorrhaging shots at the rim. JJ Starling has also shot really poorly. He's I think he's 1 for 15 on the year, maybe even more, including the Chaminade game. I know KenPom filters out the D2 numbers, and that's where I pulled that number from. But he's someone who was expected to be one of the top sophomore breakout candidates. Like, I looked at him and thought, this dude's going to be like averaging 15, 16 a game. And it sort of looks like he's the same player as he was his freshman year. His assist rate is higher. His turnover rate's about the same, though. And he's not exactly creating that dynamic duo we expected to see with Mintz. But on the other side of the floor, LSU, they had that loss to Nichols. and got off to a shaky start. But recently, they hung with Dayton, who's proved to be a really good team, and they got a win over a Wake Forest team who's good, not great. So yeah, like you said, it's still, it's a win that if you're LSU, if you can come away with this on the road, you hope that Syracuse eventually gets it together and it can get maybe quad 2, maybe even quad 1 if they can creep back into the top 75. But yeah, is there anything from this LSU team that sticks out to you?
I think they shoot the ball well enough. And especially in this game against Syracuse, making shots at any semblance of an efficient rate probably wins you this game. But to me, it's how well they've been able to defend the interior. Like teams attack LSU on the interior, and still they only come away with, 42%, which is forcing teams to actually shoot the ball. LSU has 50% of the shots against them are 3-pointers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's credit to Will Baker, Jalen Reed on the interior. Both of them are top 250 in block percentage. Same with Derek Fountain. So you're not getting many shots against them inside. And then they're holding teams to 35% from 3, which is, again, it's not great, not what you really want as a defense, but you'll take a 35% 3-point shot 9 times out of 10 as long as you're holding teams to under 43%, 42% from 2.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really fouling all that much. And if they're shooting 49% of their shots from 3 and only making 35% of them, that's more telling about your 2-point defense in my eyes than it is telling about your 3-point defense. It means that no one's getting anything in the paint.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's interesting, even looking at, I think they've pressured a good bit so far this year. They're turning teams over a lot. And that, speaking to their defense as well, that's going to be an interesting chess match in the sense that Syracuse, for all of their offensive struggles, they haven't turned it over very much. They've done a good job taking care of the ball. We'll see if that continues against LSU. You already hit on one guy with Will Baker, and that's one of the matchups I'll most be looking at here. Baker, he's been in college for forever. He was one time a 5-star recruit, might have been a McDonald's All-American, and he's shooting 50% from 3. I want to say he's like a 37% shooter for his career. He's going to be able to pull Naheem McLeod away from the basket, and yeah, I don't think that's going to end well. It might be a game where Syracuse has
The
turned to someone
advantage
else.
LSU has at the 4 and 5 spots is so big. And I get that Syracuse probably has the advantage in the backcourt.
Right.
But when your backcourt's not shooting the ball efficiently and you're relying on the front court to win the battle on the boards and you're just outmatched, like this is where I think LSU comes away with what is probably a needed win, because before they hit SEC play, the only other 2 resume building teams on their schedule are Kansas State and Texas. And I think they probably lose to Tech. Kansas State's an interesting one for LSU, but this Syracuse game, I think, is a game that LSU needs to win. I mean, probably as much as Syracuse, but if I'm looking at the 2 teams right now, LSU strikes me more as a potential tournament team, even with the loss to Nichols, than Syracuse does, considering they probably should have lost to Colgate, and then lost and looked completely outmatched in their 2 games in Maui.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.